Talion the Kindly Lord just won a tournament. Amazing, right? And I would like to say congratulations to Reynolds Griffin for getting into the first place of Final Flavor 2023. In this video we will be taking a look at his deck list, card choices, but also look into some tournament statistics for Talion's current performance. So Talion the Kindly Lord is a fairly new commander that haven't had the chance to prove itself that much yet. It currently only have 29 tournament entries so far, but it is climbing. From those 29 decks entries into various tournaments, you have an average win rate with all of those together around 19.73. However, you see a plus 2.19 there is that from the beginning, from the start of calculation, it's actually increased. So Talion is climbing up in the average win rate. Another very interesting thing is that it's actually getting a lot of draws, like a 23.81 average draw rate. So how we are calculating this is basically adding up all the wins here you see and then calculating the average win rate against losses and draws, and then basically do the same thing with draws versus win and loss. And that is giving us a total average performance from all various Talion decks. So as you can see here, we have different players who have entered into tournaments, and we are calculating what all of these different players have been able to achieve together with the choice of Talion as the boss. But is that 19.73 actually good performance? Is that desirable? Let's put it into perspective. For example, Atraxa used to be one of the best commanders. It was actually the commander with the best win rate. It was up to actually 27. It's down to 25.94, which means it's around 26. As you can see, minus 1.2. So it's actually decreased. It's as more and more people have started to enter into tournaments with Atraxa, it is currently going down a tiny bit, but it's still quite high. While Blue Farm, Tymna Kram, is currently sitting on 26.07. So they have actually gone above Atraxa here. We have Inala on 25.44. Yetmir on, I'm gonna say 14, not that good. Captain Cizay 18.89. Kinnan 23.13. Obnixilis 16% actually. Nigella has actually been dropping a tiny bit. She was going up for a while, but now it's going down a tiny bit. 23.33. You know, things are gonna go up and down all the time. It's probably gonna go up a tiny bit above 24 eventually as well. And Cizay sitting on 25.44 from 132 decks. Venota from 90 decks, I'm gonna say it's sitting on something like 17% average win rate. So that should give you a small glance of Talion's current performance and how good it potentially is as a commander. So let's take a look at this deck list. Lord of the Flies, really like that name, I really like that book, highly recommend that book. But these are the cards that he's playing. 16 creatures, Voidwalker, Fairy Mastermind, Gilded Drake, Ledger Shredder, Malevolent Hermit, Orcish, Phantasmal, Phyrexian Metamorph, Notion Thief, Vidillion Click, Opposition Agent, Aboleth Spawn, Phases, Spellskite, Sakashima, and Sholdred. Now usually inside these videos I take a look at the individual card performance to try to understand what kind of Talion build you should preferably be building. What I mean by that is if we take a look at, for example, Gilded Drake. Now, just above my head we have total decks 29 as I mentioned before, the amount of all Talion decks together. And above that you have a Play It, which are decks that are all including Gilded Drake, 23, which means that 6 decks from the grand total of all Talion decks don't include Gilded Drake. When we look at the average win rate of those 23, we're getting a 21.55. And as you can see, next to that green text, plus 1.82%. So the win rate by including Gilded Drake is actually higher, which would indicate that including Gilded Drake would be a recommended choice. With this, looking at card by card, we could try to figure out cards that probably shouldn't be inside Talion, to figure out a more optimal direction of how to actually build this commander. For example, Khan the Great Creator is sitting on a inclusion rate, that's what you see in the middle, a pie chart, a circle diagram. The green there indicates the percentage of 65.5%, the inclusion rate, which is a total of 19 decks. But the average win rate from those 19 decks becomes 14.13%, which is a decrease from the average grand total win rate by 5.6 average percent win rate drop. So the conclusion that you could potentially draw here is that you should not play Khan the Great Creator, but you should play Gilded Drake. But I want to highlight that the sample size is still really low. Like, Talion, once again, is very new, haven't been showcased into that many tournaments yet, so the power of saying that this is something we can truly trust isn't something we should take for granted. I don't actually think that that win rate is going to stick. I think that the Talion win rate might go up a little bit more over time. And the total of decks 29 just needs to increase before we can start to say strong claims about specific card choices. But we could look into some of them with some more detail. For example, Sheoldred. He is actually playing Sheoldred, and that seems to be a good decision. It is sitting on an inclusion rate of 86.2%, played by 25 decks, and they are acquiring a little bit more better win rate compared to the total average from all Talion decks. But once again, I wanna refrain back from going too much into statistics with this video because the sample size is very low. So instead, we will apply personal experience. But by saying that, I would like to say that I have a great experience looking at various of these cards actually from whenever I'm looking into commanders in general. For example, I've been looking at Blue Farm, Tymna Kraum, and the cards they are playing and how those cards are performing. So I have often looked at how Daffy Voidwalker, Fairy Mastermind and all of these creatures actually perform in general. So I can say with some personal experience looking at statistics data on other commanders playing these creatures, Daffy Voidwalker seems to be a thumbs up, Fairy Mastermind's usually a thumbs up, Gilded Drake is usually a thumbs down, it was a thumbs up on this case, Ledger Shredder is usually a thumb down, Ledger Shredder is usually performing quite bad when I look at it. Malevolent Hermit isn't that great in general, it's usually sitting at around 17% average win rate, Orcish Bowmaster is usually a thumb up, Phantasmal Image is actually getting a double thumb up, it's usually performing very good, Phyrexian Metamorph is also usually performing really good when I look at its statistic results from various different tournament decks. Notion Thief is usually getting a thumb down. Vildillion Click, I've never seen that one. I'm very surprised this is actually on this radar. So now I'm gonna say I don't have any personal experience looking at Vildillion Click. I have some personal experience playing with it and it was a little bit iffy. I kinda liked it, but in general I moved away from it quite quickly. So I don't think Vildillion Click is good, that's just my personal opinion. The creator of this decklist might have a great reason of actually including Vildillion Click. If you're watching this video, please leave a comment below why Vildillion Click is included. It's potentially great, maybe I'm not seeing it, and we also don't have any statistics really on it, so we can't say much. Opposition Agent is usually getting a double, maybe 3 thumbs up. Is usually performing really good. I've never really seen Opposition Agent get a bad performance. Obeleth Spawn is usually getting like in a mid-term section, but we don't have that much saying. I'm gonna just walk past over this one because it's an auto-include for clear reasons. Spellskite, I actually don't know. I don't think we have that much statistics on Spellskite in general. It is apparently doing quite good. It is included in about 75.9, so I'm gonna say 76% by played in 22 decks, and those got an average win rate of 22.81, which is an increase by 3.08%. So this is showcasing a great potential. I want to emphasize that we shouldn't trust this statistics yet because the sample size is once again very low. But it's showcasing a potential. So I would probably recommend having Spellskite inside the deck to protect your commander, but we will see over time with more Talion decks entering into more tournaments. We already looked at Shoulder the Apocalypse, and I'm gonna say the same thing I've said about Vigiliant Click to Sakashima the Imposter. He's playing 8 sorceries: Imperial Seal, Reanimate, Demonic Tutor, Mnemonic Betrayal. I wanna say this, Mnemonic Betrayal is a card I've looked at continuously on lots of different tournament commander decks, and is usually receiving a very good performance. Praetor's Grasp is also usually getting a good performance in general, the same thing with Windfall. This one, Yehene's Expertise, I can't really say, we don't have that much statistics on it, so I'm just gonna shrug. It's probably pretty okay. It's a good board wipe considering that you don't kill your commander because it has 4 toughness, and you get to cast something at the same time. So you could cast Yehene's Expertise and then immediately follow up with a Mnemonic Betrayal or a Windfall. I personally think that Seagate Restoration is an auto-include if you're not playing Adnos, which this deck is not. Instead, on the instant speed section, we have Chain of Vapor, Dark Ritual, Demonic Consultation, Flusterstorm, Mental, Spell Pierce, Stern, Scaldring, Limdul's Vault. Now, all of these on the top row are pretty much auto-include. Limdul's Vault is a discussion. In general, whenever I'm looking at Limdul's Vault, it's usually not that good. It's performing a little bit lower compared to the total average in general whenever I look into it. Delay is usually an auto-include. Then we have Psych Rift. Now this is gonna sound strange, but Cyclonic Rift is usually a little bit of an hit and miss when I look at it. What I mean by that is when I look at various different tournament commanders and their statistics result how Psych Rift is performing inside that specific commanders, it's going to vary. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. That means that it looks like some commanders should include Psych Rift and others shouldn't. That's a potential takeaway you could get from my personal experience looking at the performance of Psych Rift. Now in Talion's case, I actually do think that Psych Rift should be in here because Talion is a control mid-range deck that is going to the long game, and Psych Rift fits perfectly in there because it's that one big spell that removes all of your opponent's board states. Then you go to your turn and you win the game because you removed all the stacks pieces. It's also a way to just remove all attackers, which is something you might need if you're playing Talion. Then we have Brain Freeze. Now this might look strange because we are not on the color identity of red. We can't play Underworld Breach, which is usually the card you're combining Brain Freeze with. Like without Underworld Breach, Brain Freeze is a dead card, yeah, more or less. But we have Praetor's Grasp. With Praetor's Grasp, if you have a red opponent, you can find the Underworld Breach, and boom, you can assemble the Brain Freeze. And where is Lion's Eye Diamond? Wait, he's actually not playing Lion's Eye Diamond. He is playing Lotus Petal. So he can actually assemble the Praetor's Grasp, Brain Freeze, Lotus Petal if he wants to, but he doesn't play Lion's Eye Diamond. It is something he could play, I would actually argue, because with Lion's Eye Diamond and a commander like Talion that is on 4 CMC, you can mulligan really low, because if you're down to, let's say, 2, you have a Lion's Eye Diamond and a land, you have a turn 1 Talion, and from there you should be able to draw yourself into the game. So like that. Now you don't want Lion's Eye Diamond in your first opener, and it's gonna be a dead card in general throughout the match. Like it's a version of Yule Lotus. So I can see a world where you don't include it, because if it's in your opening 7, your 6th, your 5 and your 4 mulligan, it's terrible. But when you're down to your 3rd, 2 and such, then Lion's Eye Diamond is starting to be kinda okay. Also, if you're able to unload your entire hand with various other cards and using Lion's Eye Diamond to just be the finisher to get your commander into play early, then fine. And also in this case, when you have Praetor's Grasp and Brain Freeze, you could include Lion's Eye Diamond just because the fact that you could potentially assemble that Breach combo. Moving forward, Born Upon a Wind, Vamp Tutor, Swansong and Muddle the Mixture. Now I do actually have a lot of experience looking into the performance of this card in general. Whenever I'm looking at that commander deck that doesn't include the color identity of black, Muddle the Mixture usually increases the deck's win rate. But whenever I'm looking at a commander with the color identity of black, including Muddle the Mixture usually decreases the deck's win rate, indicating that it's okay tutor, but with black you probably don't need it. It comes to the question of how many tutors, and the answer is you don't need too many of them, and the blacks are usually better than this. So the indication here should be that you probably don't need Muddle the Mixture inside this deck, because it's usually a weaker tutor, even though it's also a counterspell. Demonic Consultation, Trick Bound, the Dismember, Fierce Guardianship, Force, Deadly, Misdirection, Force, Mindbreak Trap, those are mostly auto-includes. We already looked at some of these: Chrome, Jewel, Lotus, Mana Crypt, Mox Amber, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal, Talisman of Dominance, Imposter Mech, Fellower's Stone, Arcane Signet, Sol Ring, Mana Vault, Graph Digger's Cage, yes, Thought Vessel. I don't often see Thought Vessel, but I can actually kind of see it, because in Talion you're usually drawing a lot of cards, so yeah, I can see it. Witchclaw Talisman, the One Ring. In enchantments we have Bloodchief Ascension. We don't have Mind Crank. We're playing Bloodchief Ascension without Mind Crank here. Mystic Remora, Counterbalance, Dress Down, Meathook Massacre, and Rhystic Study. I don't have that much to say about any of these, except Counterbalance. It's usually, and I should actually say as well, Dress Down. Now, Counterbalance is usually getting like thumbs down. I'm gonna give it 2 thumbs down, because I've never really seen a good performance where Counterbalance is increasing the average win rate compared to the total average of that commander, compared to Dress Down, that is actually usually showcasing a increase in the average win rate for that commander. And then he's playing 28 lands, or 29 if you actually include the Seagate Restoration. So that concludes the winning deck list, but there's one more very important thing to actually talk about in this deck tech video of sorts, and that is, how are you actually going to play this commander? And the answer to that is mid-range. You're playing a control deck that is trying to draw cards and use counterspells to dictate the direction of the game. And that is one of the hardest playstyles in cEDH currently. If you compare that to Grixis, specifically Inala is actually a good example here. The Grixis game plan is usually turbo. In Inala's case, it even opens up more one-card combos with Spellseeker. So here your game plan is pretty straightforward: Spellseeker, Adnos, Phasas, or Breach, whatever comes first. And you can really practice and fine-tune your skill towards finalizing and being able to optimizing and executing this combo to the fullest. In Talion you're basically on Phasas Consult, but you have to control the game before you get there, so your game plan needs to be adaptive depending on what form of opponents you're playing against. So your skill needs to be knowledge about your opponents, because in order to deal with your opponents you need to know about their decks. So in the case between Inala versus Talion, Inala doesn't need to know everything about the opponents she's going up against, while Talion actually has. Specifically, actually, Talion is a very good example here, because when it comes to play, choose a number between 1 and 10. So you need to know which number is going to give you the highest statistical hits. If you choose the wrong number, you might draw less cards compared to what you could have drawn. This means that I believe that the average win rate up there is decreased a tiny bit, just because the fact that this is a difficult commander to actually pilot. I would like to mention Yuriko the Tiger Shadow here as well. She is not that complicated. Get her into play on a ninja trick, so she connects on turn 2, and from there drawing 2 cards, interact with your opponent, so she also needs to play that control game plan until you get to that Doomsday or Phasas Consult. But she still is easier, she has a more direct, clear game plan, where Talion is a little bit more tricky and more in the open. So I think that over time and more when people are playing Talion, they are going to get better at it and when people are getting better at it, their discords are communicating better about what cards to actually include, then we are going to see better and better results from Talion. As I've said, the win rate is slowly climbing upwards. It is starting from a very low bottom, or well, not terrible bottom, but it's starting on the lower end of the collective of various commanders, but I think it's going to increase over time.